Hi, everyone. This is Celeste, and some of you already have seen me in other content. And if it's your first time, hello, and welcome to BarMax. I'm a former law professor, and I'm content director here for the BarMax program. We also have another full-time content and instruction team member, Jennifer, who is online and answering questions in chat, and another TestMax team member, Katie, who's available as well. So if you have questions during this webinar or need help with anything BarMax related, throw those into chat. If your question is about the subject of today's webinar, scheduling your bar exam study, I'm going to look at Q&A later, but I don't want you asking questions now that I may already plan to answer, and then I'll go through and I'll wonder, did the person understand, blah, blah, blah. So I'd like you to hold off until I'm done with each section, and then I'll ask you to post your Q&A so that I know which Q&A I haven't answered yet. That's just a way to keep us kind of organized and on track because, well, otherwise I can get off track, even though I have, plenty of material I want to cover with you today, because I feel like scheduling your bar exam study is something so important, something that most students need help with. Before we dive in, I do want to let you know this is kind of a how to use BarMax question, which I'm doing a lot more about later, because for some of you, this is your first time here. But I did want to point out that if you are a BarMax student and have not already downloaded your welcome packet, you should do so. That welcome packet is available under the profile portion. So when you look at the left menu of BarMax on a computer, when you're logged in on a computer, look at the left menu of BarMax, you'll see a profile area. And you want to click there to download the welcome packet because it gives you the calendar, which we will talk about using that calendar later. And it also gives you every past essay, whether for California or the UBE, and every performance test relevant to your exam. So, and then also sample answers for those past essays. So you definitely want to make sure that you have access to those materials and that you're using them there. And then while we're in BarMax, people ask, oh, can I see the webinars later? Well, the webinars, which are open to everyone, BarMax student or no, are available on the TestMax Prep YouTube page. Okay, but within BarMax, they're also available. If you look at the left menu bar, you can see a little menu bar up in the upper left corner here. See, I just tapped it and this is what pulls out. And partway down, there's a clock for office hours. This shows all of the past office hours and webinars. Webinars are available to everyone, and office hours are run more like a regular Zoom class, and they're available to all BarMax program students. So if you click that, you'll see you have access to all of the past office hours. And some of these are actually recommended in our calendar. We recommend that you go back and watch those office hours, like BarMax Kickoff and MBE Strategies, because we feel like those office hours will get you rolling, and we don't repeat the same content every single time. We bring you new content. So we want you to watch those first two in order to get yourself rolling if you are a BarMax student. But today will also help with that. So let me get out of here, back into my presentation. What are we talking about today? We're talking about how to plan your work and work your plan. That's what it boils down to, right? Planning your work and working your plan. When we talk about planning your work, we're talking about making a weekly schedule for yourself where you block off time and protect it. Okay? Whether you are a full-time student or whether you are working and studying or working parenting and studying or some combination thereof, okay? You need to use a schedule and block off the time and protect it. We'll talk a little bit about why. We'll talk about how. I'll show you some sample schedules. And then in the sort of second half, we'll talk about how to adapt the BarMax calendar to your blocks of time. No one needs to use the BarMax calendar, religiously as if it's gospel. You need to take the assignments in that BarMax calendar and adapt it to when you are best learning, to how you are best learning, to how much learning you need to do, and spread out over what period of time. Okay, a lot of today I'll be talking to the student who's taking the February 2021 exam. If you just started, you have 11 weeks. I'm talking also to the people who have a little less time. And I'm also talking to people who have more time, who are planning to take July. So I'll be dealing with all groups, although sort of the default are the people who are launching around now their study for 2021. So we'll be talking about how to adapt the calendar to your schedule. So the process in a nutshell that we're doing today is identifying and protecting 3 to 4 hour blocks of time. I do not recommend that you say, I'm going to study for 12 hours, 6 a.m. to 6 p.m., or even 8 hours. 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. every day, I'm just going to glue myself to a chair and do my bar review. I find that that is not the most effective use of your brain. Why? Because most of us don't focus for that long. You are a human being and you will need a break. So you don't want to end up having 8 or 9 or 10 hours of mediocre study time when you could have 2, 3-hour blocks of excellent active learning. Okay, we're going to talk about the difference between your active and passive activities when we talk about how to fill your blocks of time. But first, you have to identify and protect those blocks of time. Okay, so we're talking to full-time students and to people who are working or parenting. We're going to start with the full-time student, but working parenting people, it can be done. BarMax is flexible. It's going to take, obviously a lot of work on your part, and but you are used to pushing through. And you either went to law school while working or while parenting, or you've been a working parent. You know what it is to prioritize your time. So we'll talk about some ways you might do that and what it would look like. How do you create your weekly schedule? Where? I don't care. This is an Excel spreadsheet, right? This was a simple Excel spreadsheet that we made just to, to get started on the process. Whether you use an Excel spreadsheet, whether you use paper, or print it out on a piece of paper and fill in the blocks with colored pencil, whether you use some sort of app that, there are numerous timekeeping and scheduling apps available online, or whether you use a giant flip chart or whiteboard stuck to your wall, do what works for you to create a weekly schedule. So I made these using Excel, but you don't have to use Excel. So here's my full-time student, right? Here's my full-time student, and my full-time student says, oh, well, I'm going to put 3 or 4 hour blocks of time in my day and in my evening. And look, if we just take this student's daytime blocks, the 2 blocks a day, Monday through Friday, and the 1 block on Saturday. So I'm talking just, just these blocks here. Oh, I have to use my pen for this to work. Just the blocks during the day. This student is studying 42 hours a week. which, because BarMax does not load you down with a lot of extra material that you don't need to know, 42 hours a week is enough for a lot of people. Okay, maybe even more than enough. I know that sounds sacrilege to those of you who are spending or planning to spend 60 hours a week of your life for the next 10 weeks studying for the bar. And you can use 60 hours effectively, but you can get a lot done in far less, even 30. But let's say, and so if this student is going to be so ambitious to do the 42 during the day and then another bunch of hours like I've put here at night, I think this student is studying 56 hours a week of bar study. And then they take off Friday night for their, online music jam session, right? Or whatever it is that they do for their hobby. This is fine, but is it sustainable for you? And is it necessary? Possibly not. So the student says, oh, good. Celeste at BarMax said I can study, fewer hours. So I'm only going to study 2 nights a week, and then I'm going to do my thing the other 3 nights. So that's what these purple hours are. Well, I told you that being a full-time student has pitfalls. And the pitfall is, if those purple hours are spent doing something that involves a screen or is otherwise addictive, and I'm talking, Netflix marathon, multiplayer online game, okay? Not judging, these are things that people enjoy, but they can bleed well beyond when that purple block of time ends here at 10 p.m., okay? This is ending at 10 p.m., this calendar. Now, your calendar doesn't have to end at 10 p.m., but it does need to schedule consistent sleep. You cannot be random about your sleep schedule and expect your brain to work at its best at any point during your week. That's reality. So schedule your study time, protect your study time, but also protect your sleep. So maybe for the student who loves the Netflix, the online game, the scrolling through YouTube videos, I must know everything there is to know about mulch tonight. Maybe this is a better schedule for you. Maybe keeping your hobbies and personal, that, the stuff that you enjoy doing, to a block of time that ends, not at bedtime, but quite a bit before. And then maybe using that hour and a half later in the evening for additional study time, even if it's not your best study time of the day. Notice I've put gray study time in addition to blue study time. Now, if you're a person that nighttime is your best study time of the day, you are most alert and active from 10 p.m. to 1 a.m. and then you sleep until 9, that's okay. It's not okay close to the bar exam unless your bar exam is scheduled for, with online exams, they're scheduled for different times. In the last few weeks before the exam, you need to make sure your sleep schedule mirrors the sleep schedule you need to succeed on the exam. You don't want to be taking what is normally your dead brain time and taking your exam during it, right? But there's nothing wrong. We have, 10 and a half weeks, 11 weeks. There is nothing wrong with being a night owl. Now, if you know that's your best study time, then make those what I'm calling your blue hours, right? Your absolute focused BarMax study time hours, which, as we'll see, are spent mostly doing practice questions. Okay, we'll talk about that when we get to how to fill in your schedule. But these focused blocks of time will be spent mostly on doing practice questions slowly. So what do you do during the times of study that you're like, yeah, I'm gonna study, but it's more passive? Well, then you're watching past office hours. You might be re-listening to a lecture that that you realize you need to be refreshed on. You might be reviewing flashcards, okay? But you're doing something that is less active than your active best study time. The study time I want you to Protect is the,
Hard-boiled eggs in there. There's hummus and pickle seeds.
oh, somebody's microphone is on. Yeah, the office hours I want you to protect are those 3 to 4 hour blocks of focused active study time, and give yourself enough. Now, most of my students, your schedule doesn't look like this. The schedule looks more like this. This one is based on a real student. Take a look at those green hours. She has 2 children doing remote schooling. Now, the older one is an independent learner and, in fact, is so awesome that the older one will supervise the younger one when the older one doesn't have to be live online. That's how awesome this person's older child is. I don't know what she did to deserve such a child, but I know she's grateful. Anyway, but then there are hours that both kids are online, so mom needs to be the one supervising the younger one. So those are listed as remote schooling hours. Well, notice this light orange or pinkish, tannish hours here. This student also holds a full-time job. She happens to have some flexibility in how she schedules her workday, so she uses that by taking the first 2 hours of the day to knock out 2 hours worth of work before she gets into anything else. That's how this person gets through her day. And then in the middle of the day, she has either remote schooling or a block of study time. Now, this person, in addition to an awesome child, also has an awesome co-parent, a spouse who puts the kids to bed. So she does not have to put the kids to bed. And instead, she does dinner. Okay? Dinner is non-negotiable. This person does dinner for the family. Sunday morning, church and family, also non-negotiable for this particular student. So knowing that, we had to fill in blocks of time for this student. And she's studying from 7 to 10 in the evening on this sample schedule. I think it's a little different on the real one, but this is kind of taking her schedule and, making it a prettier picture. But she is alert at those hours. Okay, you can only put your best hours in the evening if you are alert at the evening. Okay. A lot of you, your work schedule isn't this flexible. Your work looks more like this, a big giant brick in the middle of your week. Okay. And so maybe you schedule your time around that with your other activity, your other obligations. If you are working full-time and studying for the bar, you need to think about your entire schedule. If you're working out 6 days a week, you may need to either shorten your workouts or cut back. Don't stop working out, but you may need to cut back to 3 days a week. I'm just saying, depending on what your work schedule is and when your energy is, if you have, different activities that you do, you're going to have to prioritize in order to leave enough blocks for bar study, right? So this student number 2 here is, I added up all the hours. Student number 2 here is getting 28 hours of focused bar study a week. Okay, so what if, it's somebody, I'm not young, and I'm tired after work. I do work then dinner and my brain is not at its best. Well, someone like that, if they say, I'm really a morning person and I would be perfectly happy going to bed at 9 p.m., then go to bed at 9 p.m. and use those, use that chunk at the beginning of the day. Most of us aren't commuting now. A lot of us aren't commuting now. And that actually gives you a lot of time that people didn't used to have in these schedules. We used to have to work in commuting in addition to the other activities and obligations that people had in their lives. So for this student, they're using the best blocks of time first thing in the morning, and then putting those gray hours, the going over BarMax lectures or office hours, or webinars, the reviewing flashcards, the stuff that's more passive but still helpful, still in the game, but not the difficult active study method of doing BarMax questions slowly, open book. They're doing all that gray stuff in the evening. Okay, this student is still studying. Oh, I didn't add it up, but this is plenty. This is plenty. Okay, if you are able to study in good blocks of time, even 4 evenings a week, and then do more blocks on the weekend, you're going to be okay. Or if you're able to do, mornings. Okay, so I want you to get creative with your time. If you are working full time, the one caveat I would make is try to plan to take off work for 2 weeks before your exam. Some people are taking the whole month of February, and that's great if you can do that. But if you can take the 2 weeks before the exam, that is when we most want people to focus on memorization. That is when we most want people's heads in the game. On Monday, I talked to someone who paid to send their ex on vacation with their child for the 2 weeks or about 10 days before the bar exam in order to not be focused on the child. And this person said to me, look, if you had told me a year before that I would be, spending my money to send my ex on vacation, I would have gotten a good laugh out of that one. But that was what was necessary to prioritize the time. Now, that one is super creative, but it lets you know that people are finding creative ways to get the time in. If you don't have the kind of support at home that, this student over here had, you need to figure out what you can outsource. It's difficult. We're in a pandemic. You can't just have, 3 different childcare providers coming into your home, or that you drop your kid at childcare anymore in many places. But is there anything you can outsource in your life? When I was a young lawyer working at a big firm, I could not get laundry into my week. I rented an apartment in a building with 1 washer and 2 dryers. So it wasn't happening on Saturday. I paid people to do my laundry. This sounds ridiculous. Yes, the wash, dry, and fold had my knickers, but it was necessary for me in order to be on my game at work during that period of my life. You will need to find ways to create the time in your schedule. And finally, why do I say 3-hour blocks instead of 2? Because if you are only giving yourself 2 hours because you're squeezing it in between other things, you're going to cut 15 minutes off the beginning because the other thing is going to bleed into it, and you're going to be too tired by the time you get to the end, or vice versa. If you schedule that block of 3 hours, you are going to get at least 2 very solid, focused hours of study in there. But I want you to fight for 3. 2 is good if you're really focused the whole time, but I want you to fight for 3. 4 is gravy. If you can keep your attention on stuff for 4 hours, great. All right, so these were just sample schedules, but I hope that they gave you ideas about how to work with your schedule. I got a lot of specific questions leading into this. And one student said, okay, I have my daughter every other week. And when my daughter's with me, we're doing online schooling all day. So when the daughter is with her, her schedule is going to look more like this. Okay, with maybe even a little less weekend time. And then when the daughter's not with her, the schedule is going to look more like this. Okay. The caution is don't try to cram it all into the weeks when you don't have your daughter. Okay. Schedule those same 3 to 4 hour blocks, give your brain those breaks, and keep in the game. Try to do at least something most days, even on the weeks you have your daughter there. In terms of getting creative, for those of you with small children, it gets dark at 4:30 anyway. What would happen to your schedule if you sent them to bed an hour earlier? People have done that too. Whatever you need to do. So do schedule some time. All right. I'm hoping that this helped you if you face pitfalls like those Netflix marathons or like other obligations that can eat into every moment of your life. Oh, another way to protect your time. Obviously, if you are working with a co-parent on your, through this, look, you only want to do it once. They only want you to do it once. Make sure you're communicating really well and that you're both on board with the same schedule. But when you are studying, your kids are not with you. I recommend that people, if they have a separate room, a lot of people don't have a separate room, but if you have a separate room where you study, get one of those little latches and put a lock on the door. You are not available. If you're going to take a remote exam, you want a lock on that door anyway, because if somebody wanders in during the exam, they say it's cheating and you could get your whole score canceled. You just don't want that nightmare, right? So you're going to have a lock on your door for the exam anyway. Put it on now. I know not everyone's scheduled to take a remote exam, but many of you are. So there's an idea, okay? I'm talking about being resourceful, marshaling whatever resources you have, outsourcing what you can outsource, and cutting back on anything unnecessary so that you can make bar study enough of a priority. All right, so we're going to move on to filling in. Oh, I had some more specific questions. I'm sorry, I wrote them in my notes. Currently still in law school. I can't do this now because I am, studying for finals, and finals won't be over until after next week. Okay, that's real. So you only have 9 weeks instead of 11. Well, keep in mind that someone studying 30 hours in a focused manner could get this done in 11 weeks. So you just need to study more than 30 hours during the time remaining after law school. You need to find those blocks in your week to give yourself more time to catch up. We'll look at the BarMax calendar, but you see you have 3 days often for these larger subjects, 3, 4, there's usually 1 day a week off, which is actually a good thing to take 1 day a week off. Some of my samples did and some didn't, because sometimes it's not possible for some people to take entirely off, but it is good to take 1 day a week off. But you will need to schedule. So anyway, the BarMax calendar gives you 3-4 days on each subject. You're going to have to compress that into 2 if you start behind, but you will catch up. You will be able to accomplish all of the assignments that you need to accomplish to be ready. Okay. So, and then someone who's taking the exam in July, you're going to schedule a study schedule for yourself where you're giving yourself, 10, 15 hours a week over more time. When should you start if you're not starting now? Well, first of all, if you're still in law school, you want to do well in law school, obviously. But one thing you can work on is the performance test. The performance test doesn't require memorizing anything. So it's called the MPT if you're taking the UBE exam, and it's called the California Performance Test, or California PT if you're taking the California exam. But either way, it's a very similar task. You're given a file, has all the law you need in it, and a task to complete. So why not go into BarMax, watch the office hours that are here on the MPT. There are several. There's a webinar and a 3 office hours addressing the MPT. It's something that a lot of people, some people need, extra work at or like to get work at. Get good at it. Do a few, practice, turn them in for review. If you purchase BarMax, you get to use it right away. So why not purchase it right now with the 19% discount? Start turning in MPTs and getting feedback on your writing now, because with nothing to memorize, there's nothing to forget. And then sometime during your second semester, if you want to start in advance on the other stuff because your last semester of law school is a little lighter, it is for some people, it was for me. It was a slightly lighter semester. I was writing instead of doing, as much coursework. I was doing a lot of crazy things, especially my second year. Um, but, if you want to start studying, then great. Set up a schedule for yourself where you're giving yourself some hours during the week to prepare, and then knowing that you'll spend more time in the weeks before the exam. Okay, if you are working full time through the whole process, then, and this is true also. A student wrote, I'm coming back to the law after a long absence. Depends how much time you have. If you are taking the exam in July and working full time through the process, then schedule, a certain number of hours each week. When you should start depends on where you're coming from. I will be talking to foreign lawyers. I'm doing another webinar in the spring because more foreign lawyers, it looks like, will be able to take July than February. We're not sure about that yet, but it looks like it. And, for those people, they may need to study certain subjects they didn't have in law school a little more, spend more time, more effort on certain subjects. So it does depend on your own situation. But you'll find if you've been practicing law and are coming back and taking another bar exam, that you have skills and that you've developed that are going to help you in your study. So anyway, just plan your work and then fill in those blocks. So how do you fill in the blocks? First of all, before we jump right into the calendar, I want you to understand that we really phase the bar study time. We think of your first time through the material, and for those of you on the traditional track, that's really almost 6 weeks. Okay, it's about 5.5 weeks. You're just learning the material and how it's tested. You're getting an understanding, a comprehension of the material. We're not worried about memorization at this point. We're worried about comprehension. Your main focus during this time is doing practice questions slowly, open book. I go through the method in like I said, in the MBE basics video or MBE strategies office hour, which was my first one. So forgive the technology, please. It's not as pretty. And also the MBE basics webinar. Okay. Use that method, go through slowly, open book. During the review time, yes, you'll still be doing practice questions. You'll be doing more questions timed now, because during the first phase of study, you're doing them slowly. But during the second phase of study, you'll do some timed, and you'll also create your memory tools. And I did a webinar an office hour in February about memorization. It was called, strategies for February, but it was really about, a lot of it was about memorization. So it's good to look at that. But, use what worked for you in law school. If that is mini outlines or diagrams, if it's making your own flashcards, I don't recommend making your own flashcards of an entire course. Make your own flashcards of the rules that you find yourself missing on questions, because that means those are rules that are tested that you don't yet know. These are the ones we want you to focus on in review. So you can be making your own flashcards as you go along if you notice that there are certain things that come up again and again that you don't know the rule. And then finally, like I said, those last 2-3 weeks, you are mostly memorizing. There is some timed practice, and you'll be reading through past essay questions for review. Now, we're going to have office hours all along the way. So we're here to answer your questions through the whole process if you are a BarMax student. Jennifer and I are leading different office hours. We have one on the remote exams. We have one next week that's actually not an office hour. It's a webinar on brain training, how to use these techniques to train your brain for the bar exam. Oh, I did that instead of this. Okay, so During this first phase, this 5-6 weeks we have now, I've told you, and I'm saying it might sound repetitive, but use your best hours on practice questions, not on flashcards, not on passively listening to questions, and for the love of God, not reading the outlines. Do not read the outlines in a vacuum. You will read sections of the outline as you do practice questions slowly. You'll go to a question. Okay, so anyway, hang on, I'm getting ahead of myself. I get excited, sorry. So let's say we're in the February California study calendar, or maybe we're in the February UBE study calendar. I'm going to go to crimes for a couple reasons, one of which crimes is the same in both. California does not test distinctions in crimes. So crimes is the same in both calendars, with the exception of which essays are assigned. Obviously, these are California essays. The UBE students have UBE essays. I wanted you to notice a couple of things here. First of all, you do not have to do the material in this exact order. What we want you to do is when you listen to a lecture segment, do the questions after that lecture. So I'm going to go into crimes here. I'm in the full course screen, which is the default screen on BarMax. Okay, I go to crimes. Let's say I'm doing crimes against persons. Oh my goodness, what is that, Jason? Anyway, you know, I have a lecture to listen to. It's about an hour. Some of the lectures are 10 minutes. Some of them are 2 hours. A lot of them are about an hour, just depending on how much tested content there is. Okay. So these are about an hour, this particular crimes lecture and several of the crimes lectures. So after you listen to the lecture, you are going to go right to the multiple choice questions here at the bottom of the page. And you'll notice that for crimes against persons, you know, this is our homicide, our battery, our kidnapping, yeah, all of these fun things. Anyway, why I started here, I don't know, but it's a good one. You'll do these questions, like I said, slowly. And what we mean, you can look at the other videos, but you will eliminate the wrong answer choices, and if necessary, by looking up the rule. Okay, you might have a book, or you might have just the BarMax program at this point. You can look up the rule in the lecture outline. If you're doing it that way, maybe if you're working from home, use 2 devices. You know, have the questions on your phone and the lecture on your computer. You know, here I've got my iPad, I've got the questions on my iPad, I can put the lecture on my computer. That way I can jump to where I want to be in the notes. Or I can use the book, which has all of the outlines. There's, you know, this is the UBE book, California books right over there. Okay, so look up the rule before selecting an answer choice. This seems really slow, but if you are not 100% sure that you know, then look up the rule before selecting an answer choice. Yes, we have an explanation. I mean, I can do this and I can just say, oh, I'm going to choose answer choice D for all of them, okay? Which is going to be wrong for 3 out of 4, right? And so I can see explanations, you know, for the right answer. And sometimes, you know, where things have been unclear to students, we have explanations for the wrong answers as well. We also have, I guess some of you haven't seen this, so in the upper right-hand corner here, we have a place where questions have been answered. At any rate, I want you doing these slowly because you're reinforcing what you learned in the lecture by looking at it and reading it to yourself while applying it to a question. This is very uncomfortable to students at first. Students hear this, they go, and they don't want to do it. I want you to do this. Look up the rule for anything you are not 100% dead cold certain about. before you select an answer choice, because that gives you the rule while you have the fact pattern of an actual bar exam question in front of you. Okay. And now the rule and the fact pattern, it's sticky. And having those things together helps it stick in your brain. You're going to say, oh, this is like that one about the kid in the bushes. There's literally a criminal law question about a kid in some bushes. Okay. Was it reasonable for the guy to shoot him? Okay. Oh my gosh, people are shooting children. The bar exam is brutal. Watch my MBE strategies page for our office hour for some words on that. Anyway, so let's say this student is doing crimes, doing the crimes materials in BarMax. We don't want her doing crimes. She wants to become a lawyer. She shouldn't be doing crimes. She should be doing crimes materials in BarMax, not committing crimes. All right. So she doesn't have to do these all at once and then do questions. She wants to do the questions after each lecture along the way. Questions after each lecture along the way. I'm going to show you a trick about the essays too. Since you're here today, you're going to get some insider knowledge that isn't necessarily explained in the calendar, but I'm going to explain it to you now. There's more going on with BarMax than we can put in the calendar. If you look at the 3 essays that are selected here, they're still circled, for crimes, you'll notice that they're not in chronological order. July 2011 comes before July 2010. Why is that? Because they go in order that the material is taught. The first 2 essays there go in order that the material is taught. Okay, so you can do the first essay after you've listened to the first 3 or 4 lectures. So let me take everything that I just showed you about how BarMax works. I got to get out of this. And then, hello, go away. Go away. And then, yes. Okay, here we go. And put it in the schedule of my early bird. Now, again, your blocks of time may be somewhere else during your week, but this is my early bird. And she knows that next week she needs to do contracts and con law. So this person doesn't have much time during the week, using mostly weekend time. She's going to start contracts on Sunday. Okay. She listens to, look at the first block on Sunday. She listens to lectures, I guess I could write on it, 1 through 3. And then and does the questions after each lecture. And then she does the first essay. Now notice I say to outline some essays, or the calendar says to outline some essays and to write others. What do we mean by that? For some of the essays, we just want you to read them, think about the fact pattern given the law you just learned. Think about that fact pattern, what rules would apply, what would the outcome be, and then look at the sample answers or the NCBE analysis and think, okay, did I identify the correct main issues here? Did I identify the correct rule and know how it would apply? So you don't have to write a beautiful outline. You can just scrawl a few bullet points on a piece of paper, but I want you thinking through that essay. Or if you're taking an online exam, you might want to scrawl your bullet points in a Word document or something, just to get used to doing it online. So you're going to write up your little list of issues and how you think each one will go, look at the answers. And so that gives you a chance to take some of that law you just learned and again, apply it to a fact pattern. So it is sticky in your head. Okay, then this student's going to take a break, and in the second session in the afternoon is going to do the same thing with the remaining lectures, the questions after the lectures, the question after each lecture segment, and the essays. Monday morning, she says, aha, now I can launch into MBE questions. Generally in the calendar, it says do 50 MBE questions, okay, in addition to the ones after the lecture. Depending on your schedule, you may or may not get to 50 because I'm asking you to do them slowly. You will get to more later, when you come back and review contracts. But however many you get to, like use, block out that study time. I just want to show you where they are for students who are new to BarMax or using BarMax. I'm in the full course, but I have this little thumbtack. I'm sorry, it's supposed to be a filter in the upper right corner. See that little picture of the filter? I'm going to tap that and this menu pops up. Okay, so I tap that, it goes away. I'm tapping the filter in the upper right-hand corner. This menu pops up. I can go to the MBE questions page and, taking a look over here at crimes, I have, whoops, what happened? Wow, that was interesting. Okay, taking a look over at crimes, you can see I have 206 questions here that I could be looking at. You can't really see the number very well at the bottom, or maybe you can. I can't because Zoom stuff blocks it. But 206 questions at in crimes here. So you won't get through all of them. You might not even get through 50. But how would this student plan her week, knowing I have 3 hours? I'm not going to get through 50 questions. Well, this student says, I haven't written an essay yet. Okay, we recommend that you outline or just, bullet point and review the first two. But the third one, which could cover the first or second half of the course, it's heavily tested material and a straightforward question. Okay, we want you to write that one and turn it in for review. Again, when you buy BarMax, if you have the program, you have 10 free essay reviews. So if you're only using the ones that are included in your program, you won't turn in one for every subject, but turn in a few early on to make sure that your essay writing format is where it needs to be. Because if that's something that needs work, it's good to know. Anyway, so this student decides on Monday morning, I'm just going to do MBE questions for an hour. Then I'm going to take a break and write that essay I need to write. And then I'll do MBE questions for the rest of the time I have until I need to start work at 9. So do you see how this person is making the most use of the time that she has? Now in the evening, we talked about it. This is our morning person. She's kind of brain dead after dinner. So maybe reviewing flashcards, maybe watching a webinar or an office hour is the way to go for her, in that time after dinner to kind of keep her head in the game. Maybe, maybe she even takes a night off, because she can't do much. As long as she is getting to bed at the bedtime that she set, she'll be successful with her, morning lark schedule. Okay. Notice I have her reviewing crimes flashcards. Wait a second. She just finished contracts. Shouldn't she be reviewing contracts flashcards? Well, one way to make sure you're remembering the stuff you just previously covered is to go over it again a little later. It's called spaced repetition. So maybe she says, oh, I know I've got to work on those inchoate crimes. I've got to work on that accomplice liability and attempt. So I am going to just do my flashcards for accomplice liability and attempt. So then she gets to Tuesday, she's beginning con law. She's doing just lectures 1 and 2 and the questions afterwards because that's going to take her the time that she has. And same thing on Wednesday with lectures 3 and 4. Now, you're going to tear out your hair. You're going, it's Friday. She spent 4 days on con law. The calendar only says 3. Yes, but she does most of her studying on the weekend. So during the week, she spreads things out more. During the weekend, she gets more done. She is going to kick butt on evidence come Saturday. Okay, but during the week this week, she's spending 4 days on con law because this is how to best use the time she has. And again, in the evening, we have her going over flashcards. At the end of it all, she's reviewing some contracts flashcards. Okay, maybe she decides, I did all that con law stuff, and I really am not sure. Now that I've done a bunch of questions, I'm just not sure that I have a handle on, that lecture on equal protection and due process. So instead of doing flashcards this night, I'm actually going to listen to the lecture segment. Oh, sorry, this is huge. This is highlighting instead of drawing. Anyway, she says, I'm going to listen to that lecture segment again. That's fine. She can reschedule her evenings as she goes along. These are the gray. This is the extra. This is the bonus study time. Okay. So I've given you a very detailed example of someone's schedule so that you can start to think about how you would do this for the time that you have. And I am going to take a whole bunch of Q&A right now. Let me get out of here first. And then I will talk about kind of working your plan, okay? Because I know I did like the first 2/3 of my presentation. I haven't taken a single question, but I did want to make sure that I got through a good amount of it first. So so I'm going to start with the questions that came. Ideally, how many hours to allocate to MBE and essays and performance tests per week? Martin Lynch. Again, most of your study time, obviously, if you're going through this for the first time through and you are not familiar with the topic, then you need to listen to the lecture as well. So if you're studying for 30 hours in a week and 7, 10 of that is hours and the other 20 is practice questions. Okay, so the lectures is not the main thing. Maybe some weeks you're doing 14, 15 hours of lectures because, again, the topic is new to you. But then you're devoting the rest of your time not to flashcards, not your main study time, not to reviewing the outline, but to doing MBE and essay questions. And then you'll do performance tests. We have you sort of focusing on them. Once you're through the MBE subjects, if you find out it's an area where you need more work, then start earlier and do more. So that should answer that one. And then, are there updates in the welcome packet? Should I re-download it? Victor, it has not yet been updated to reflect 2021 because October, the bar exam just happened. But if you want the February calendar, just reach out to support. We have within BarMax this in the left-hand menu, there's the little headset for support, and someone can send you the February 2021 calendar. So indicate whether you want UBE or California and just say, I want the 2021 calendar. And we are glad, Victor, to have you back since you didn't take the October bar and you're taking February instead. Let's see. So Nicole says, but my plan is to take the UBE in February. Not sure the best way to refocus for UBE instead of California. Okay, Nicole. So if you are very familiar with the MBE materials, then just spend time reviewing those, doing practice questions, but focus first, flip your calendar and focus first on the MEE subjects that you don't yet know. Okay, like family law outside of California, our family law in UBE land, or corporations is longer because there are more tested issues. So go ahead and do those MEE subjects first, and then do the MBE subjects. So take a calendar and put all the same stuff, but flip it around and know that you may not need to listen to the lectures again in the MBE topics and in the MBE topics for sure. You may not need to listen again if you find that you did well in that area, if you're very clear in that area. Listening to the lecture is not the best use of your time, Nicole, because you've already heard them. Maybe you need to listen to a segment of a lecture again, but mostly do that active study method of review of MBE questions after you go through the MEE topics. I think that would be the advice I would give to you. And again, for anyone that needs very specific advice, this is a great thing to do with a tutor. that schedule of the person who's homeschooling and working and when are remote learning with her kids and working and whatnot. Like, we did that in our first session together. That was most of what we did, but we planned a strategy so that she knew she was setting for success. And so our tutors can do that with you. We have Jennifer here. We have Matthias. He's great at that. We have a whole panoply of tutors who this is part of what we do. So do expect to spend the first time on that. April wants to know where the calendar is. And when you download your welcome packet, it is part of your welcome packet. It's in there. If you're having trouble with that step, again, do reach out to support because they will help you to get that welcome packet. The essays, okay, here's the deal. The essays, Lori wants to know where essays are. They are available here. Like if you go to the filter, okay, you get the whole MBE questions page, okay, but they're not on the full course page. They're on a separate essay page. However, I don't recommend you do them here. I recommend you do them from the welcome packet because when you download the welcome packet, you have a zip file of all the essays you need. And then you can look at the answers along with the essays. This is just the questions. So I would actually recommend that for the most part, you work from the PDFs that are in the welcome packet and ask support if you're having trouble locating any of that. Is it too much to take notes during the lecture? Or if you learn by taking notes while listening, then do take notes, Magali. I don't think you should take a ton of notes. You might just want to annotate things in your book, like follow along in your book, and then write if there's something additional that helps you to understand. I wouldn't take extensive notes during your lecture, but you might want to annotate your book or take brief notes during the lecture. But because you're asking about, should I just focus on listening and trying to understand? Well, I listen better if my hand is moving with a pencil in it. And if you're like me, then that's the best way to listen. But I don't want you to try to create some beautiful outline your first time through the material. No. You're doing that your second time through the material when you're just doing lots and lots of review. Okay. Does BarMax have Florida bar review? I only need to study for Florida Part A. No, Michael, we don't. I wish we did. There's so many more people we could help because we're really only helping people with the MBE part in Florida. I've talked to people about how to self-study, what materials to use, but that's kind of beyond the scope of today. And unfortunately, we do not have a bar review for Florida. And I wish you all, the best with that. If you want to use this for the MBE and have advice about how to self-study the other part, then reach out and I can talk to you about that separately. Should you be doing anything additional each day other than what's listed in the calendar? Well, April, I hope I kind of answered that by showing you kind of how to use the calendar to your most advantage. But doing questions after each lecture is the most important part. So when it says a lecture, really that means doing the lecture and the questions after. The flashcards are not necessary. The flashcards are for review. And some of the sets of flashcards you might find very helpful because they kind of restate the whole outline. Many of them are in question and answer format. So they restate the outline in question and answer format. I think the torts ones may be different right now online and in the app because I'm not sure about that, but they were just updated recently and may not have flowed into the app yet. But so yeah, focus on doing the lectures and the questions and the essays in the calendar. That's where you should start. Now, during the review time in the calendar, I don't have it up here. Then you'll be doing more practice questions, and we'll talk about it when we get to that time, kind of how to best use your review time. but you will be doing lots more practice questions, going over those parts of the outline again, not necessarily listening to the lecture again or anything like that. July UBE calendar. You know what? We need to put that up soon if it's not up already. So, anonymous attendee, let me just write myself a note here. We do need to get July calendars up soon. However, it won't be super helpful for you because all it will be is the February calendar crammed into the 11 weeks before the July exam. Whereas if you're studying, say, starting in, March for the July exam, then you can spread out your study time. So really, you can use the February calendar to study for July. Just spread it out over the weeks that you have. Like plot out which subject you're going to study each week if you are starting in, March or April or whenever. Because that calendar itself won't start until May. I have been out of school for a while. Is it better to sit for February or July? I work full time. Yeah, that is a super difficult personal decision, right? You don't want to try to start memorizing stuff now for July. But if you're concerned about the MPT, start working on that now. Start studying for July in, even like, I don't think, February is too soon. You could start now. It's just you risk forgetting what you've learned along the way and also just burning yourself out, spending too many months where that after work time. So you could do it now. You got to look at what's possible for you in your schedule when you plan those blocks of time. If you can set blocks of time that you can devote that 30 hours a week or so to bar study between now and the bar exam, dealing with the realities of the holidays and everything else, then go for it. Then go for February. But if you feel like you need to, that a lot of it's going to be unfamiliar to you and that sounds overwhelming to work that much, then postpone till July and spread out your study time. So it really is a super personal decision. So when should we begin phase 2? Okay, phase 2. I didn't put the actual calendar in here, but if you look with me at your BarMax calendar, which it was an oversight on my part to not put the other pages. I put the first page. But basically, when you get to January, it's really the last month. When you get to around January 22nd on the current calendar, and again, you might get to this sooner, depending on how you phase your own, how you schedule your study time. But around January 22nd, you will be doing practice questions and working on your memorization. And the last few days, you will just be cramming. So you'll be doing lots of practice questions. There's study advice, but also you'll be doing practice tests during that time. And the practice exams are all in February. If you want to move one of those up to the end of January, that's okay too. Like really adapt it to your needs. I just lost my questions. Hang on, here you are. All right. So you're supposed to be during that time that's just kind of review, Lauren, you should be doing more practice questions in each subject. But here you'll be doing some still open book slowly and some timed to get yourself, familiar with kind of the time pressure of the exam. You'll do short sets timed. And then you can review other essays as well. And by then, hopefully you'll be confident about where your writing is. If not, you do more writing. But if you're confident about where your writing is, then you just review past essay questions to kind of get a handle on the issues that are tested. So that's what we recommend during that time. Nevada. You know what, Ken, I want you to reach out specifically to Jennifer. We have a Nevada attorney. She's actually on this call. And Ken Harris, I want you to send that exact question through support and write BarMax content Jennifer or something like that, because Jennifer's going to answer that one specifically for you on how to best study for that weird exam that they have announced for February. So that's a little beyond what I can do right here. Scott, in terms of flashcards, that, you know, I do content, right, for BarMax. So I've actually, that is one of the updates that is in progress. Without flashcards, I recommend that you watch the MPRE roadmap sessions. The roadmap sessions are good webinars to watch in those last weeks before the exam. They talk about how to map out your essays. The secured transactions one that I did, if I'm allowed to say so myself, is very clear summary of secure transactions. And then I would just recommend, you know, reading through past essays, spot the issues, figure out what's going on, read the answer, see if you were right, do another essay. It takes a lot less time than writing essays, so you can get through more of them. So reviewing actual live essays is a great way to review and go over your knowledge of the MPE topics with or without flashcards. So, because I don't know when those are all going to be up, but that is a project that we have, let's call it in progress. For Scott. Now, Melissa, I've been talking as if the time needed to study is 30 hours a week, but obviously for some people it might be more, for some people it might be less, depending on, you know, your pace basically, and you know, how fast you learn, and how familiar some of the topics are to you. So I don't like to give a hard and fast, right? 30 hours is for somebody who's working and studying and trying to squeeze it into the most efficient time possible. If you have more time, then do devote more time, but don't burn yourself out, right? Write a schedule for yourself that looks like, you know, the one I showed early on, where you have some reasonable blocks of time, and that you're also getting to bed on time, so that you're keeping your head in the game, and you know, just focusing on the bar exam. Oh, MBE is multiple choice. MEE is the essay portion of the uniform bar exam. So if you're taking the UBE, you're in a UBE state, your essays are called the MEE. If you're in California, your essays are called California essays. That's a little clearer. Sorry, we use so many acronyms in this business. Anita, if you're new, I apologize. I did an intro to the bar exam webinar, but hopefully that cleared it up. Yes, is there a payment plan for tutoring? Yes. I'm going to warn you, the discounts do not apply to the payment plans, because the payment plans are through a firm. So there are payment plans available. There's zero interest payment plans, I think, through a firm. You can reach out to us, you know, again, click the support button, you know, I need help setting that up, or just call our sales number, and they can help set you up with that Affirm payment plan. That can apply to either a program or tutoring. Fair question. So there is no link to just download the study calendar, Ugo. There is just the welcome packet. That's something we do want to build in. We are making improvements all the time, I swear. But we'd like to have a place you can just download the calendar, but right now it's part of the welcome packet. If you just need the calendar, you know, and you're a BarMax student, then reach out to support through the app, and ask just for the calendar. But you know, that applied to one student who had an out-of-date version of the calendar. But otherwise, it's in the welcome packet. If you're having trouble finding it, reach out to support. Should we use outside MBE study questions? Oh, for the love of God, no. Laura, this is an important question. Laura Choutbis on here. Thank you for this question, for clearing it up. BarMax has every real MBE question that has been released. These are real questions provided by NCBE, the National Conference of Bar Examiners. Look, I'm watching my acronyms. These are all the multiple choice questions that have ever been released, that are released now for real bar exams. There aren't a heck of a lot, like compared to the LSAT, which releases a couple of exams a year. The National Conference of Bar Examiners is very stingy about which questions they release. So they haven't released a whole lot. Civil procedure, I have a whole separate video about civil procedure. You guys can jump there under the videos if you want. But since BarMax has all of the real questions, and fake questions are affirmatively harmful in many cases because they make you think that the bar exam is going to be something that it isn't, and they test you on material outside the scope of the bar exam, or they are written in such a way that they are more confusing than helpful, in my opinion. Okay, so that's why we believe studying from real questions is where you should study. And since we have all the real questions, there is no need to do outside questions. Again, in every topic but civil procedure, there are more than 200 questions. And then if you scroll down to the bottom of the MBE questions page here, first of all, you'll see that there are 4 online practice exams, 100 real questions each. These are put out by NCBE. And then below that, the most recent questions that have been released are down in the MBE study aid. There's 30 questions in each subject. So if you're getting close to the exam, you want to refresh yourself on recent material, do these 30. Well, guess what? They're also up here in the mixed sets, okay? But you can do these 30 just to kind of help yourself focus. There is no harm in redoing a real question. In fact, there's a way that we have to delete all your work so far and, get rid of all your answers and start over. And I actually recommend that people do that before they start doing the online practice exams so that they can use the handy dandy analytics to see how they're doing in each area. Well, I cleared my analytics, so all I have is that crimes question that I answered wrong on purpose. My goodness, I'm at 0%. Looks like I need to study. Anyway, so Laura, I answered your question perhaps vociferously, but thank you for raising it. If I studied corporations 3 months ago, it starts fading in memory. In 6 months, I remember only half. Zoya, this is a good point. So this is why I was talking about spaced repetition with the flashcards. Like, do flashcards from a topic you were studying 1 or 2 topics ago. Now, at this point, we don't have corporations flashcards in the UBE program. I think we do in California. I'm not sure. Anyway, we're working on flashcard updates. So say there's no flashcards and you want to study corporations like a couple weeks or a week after you first studied it, then just set aside an hour to look through a couple of corporations essays. You don't have to write them out, just look through them, see if you can identify the issues. So reviewing old essays for the essay only topics is a great way to review, to remember. 6 months is a long time to remember anything. So if you're studying for July, maybe starting with the MPT, which doesn't require you to remember anything, will be better than starting with a subject, right? But when you do study the subjects, doing lots of practice and then spacing out your practice. So for my students who are studying for a longer period of time, I actually recommend that they circle through the topics 3 times. So they do the first time through and then a review and then their final review and memorization because they have more time. So that might be what you do, Zoya, if you're taking the exam in July. Hello. From one of my students who sends me questions online. And do I have any advice for anyone who has trouble fitting a subject into 3 to 4 days? Well, I'm hoping that the advice that I gave earlier about how to focus your time, not trying to memorize everything up front, just getting familiar with it and how it's tested by doing practice questions, that by focusing and prioritizing, that you'll be able to get it done in those 3-4 days, since I think you are indeed taking February. Ransom. What if we're in our last couple of trimesters of law school? So here's the thing. I think I did cover this in my presentation. This is an earlier question, but focus on, for Ransom and those in your shoes, focus on MPT for now. Just get used to doing the performance test. And then you can start studying somewhat early, but I wouldn't, you don't need to start quite yet, unless, well, it just depends. I mean, you might want to meet with a tutor about your specifics if there's anything unusual about your schedule. Iowa February VAR, and they've moved to online. Okay, Kiranjit, I did do a session on taking online exams. And the information may not be totally current because they're changing the format of the online exam. For UBE students, the February online exam will now be a full UBE. I don't know how they're going to do that because online exams are remotely proctored, which means they have more breaks because you can't get up and go to the bathroom during a session. You have to log in and log out, and then you come back and there are new questions. But preparing for an online exam is the same no matter what, which is you need to do your preparation on screen and not by hand. You need to get used to taking your little notes beside an essay on screen. So yes, watch the office hours that I did about that in preparation for the October exam, because the October exam was online. And if you still have questions, then yes, reach out. We can, do tutoring or whatever, but learn all you can about your state's online format also to make sure that you understand how it's going to be administered. I don't think we have all that information yet. So, precisely everything. So just start by practicing your essays and even taking notes for your MBE questions on a screen, instead of, circling stuff, highlighting stuff, whatever. Okay? Okay, Florine, July, California. Should I start tutoring now to help set up my study schedule? It's not a bad idea. If you decide to purchase a tutoring package, Florine, meet once with your instructor now to kind of set up your whole game plan and then start meeting again a couple months before your exam. That actually sounds pretty wise, right? Because you're getting the most bang for your buck. I don't know. I like that idea. So Reed, before ending the webinar, please repeat the essential steps and corollary study materials to prepare for the bar. Reed, I can't repeat everything, but I can offer you some consolation. This webinar will be available online. It takes a few days for our magicians here, and we do employ magicians to edit these and get them posted. But this will be on YouTube, on TestMax Prep YouTube's channel, TestMax Prep YouTube channel. Okay. Oh, we didn't talk about Stuff Happens. We'll get there. Okay, and it's also available within the app or on the website if you're a BarMax student. Ugo, Adaptable uses the same MBE questions that we do, except they also write some fake civil procedure questions that I find unhelpful. So I would say use only BarMax questions, and you'll have all the real questions that there are, and watch my webinar about how to prepare for civil procedure for extra advice on that. Eduardo, the recommended sequence is in the calendar. Chioma says, thank you. Ugo's going to reach out to support. Can the coupon be coupled with a public interest scholarship? I don't know, Catherine. Reach out to us and find out. I don't think so, because that's already a big discount. It's the biggest discount that we have, but reach out and find out what we can do. So anonymous attendee, you asked about before work and after work. I hope I answered that. Use your best energy, whether that's night or morning, on MBE questions. Use your lesser energy. If you're like just getting, this is your first cup of coffee in the morning, then you're listening to lectures, but then you're doing the MBE questions at night and getting back, doing them active study method. I hope that helped you. Retaking the Illinois bar exam. Oh, I'm so sorry, Margaret, that you were not successful. Not clear on in-person exam or not. Differences in how to prepare. It's just kind of how you do your note taking that is different in how you prepare. And right now, I wouldn't worry about it, just prepare. And you can reach out if you want tutoring or more advice on that, or even just reach out to me through support. I want to, where did I say to find the recording? Okay, so first of all, let me get that on here. Nita, I'm going to finish what I have and then I'll take the rest of the Q&A because I took a lot and I hope everybody else isn't bored out of their brain, but I still have several of you left. So might as well do this. Look, the name of the company is actually TestMax, right? We have the LSAT Max product for people who haven't yet gone to law school. They take LSAT Max, right? So it's TestMax is the company. And if you look at the TestMax Prep YouTube channel, you'll find the BarMax videos on there. There's like a series of webinars. The other videos, the office hours, okay, and I'm telling you where to get all the free stuff because we want to be helpful, but yes, we want you to buy BarMax or at least some tutoring, even if you're using a different program, but we want to be helpful, so it is on YouTube as well. But if you're in the BarMax program, when you hit the upper left corner here, there's a menu that pops up. Now this menu, if you're in the web, if you're looking at it through like a computer or a web browser, it's going to be already there on the left. But on the app, I'm in my iPad here, you need to actually hit that little thing in the upper left, that little menu, right? And it appears. Okay, that's how to get to this menu. And then from this menu, you click the clock icon. It is the third from the bottom. It looks like a clock. It says office hours, and voila, you have all the videos, not just the ones that are on YouTube, but also the ones that are available just to BarMax students. I'm in UBE right now, but there are some California essay specific office hours as well that you will want to go watch if you are a California student. I have the power. I can switch between UBE and California, but right now I'm in UBE. I wanted to talk about what happens as you're working your plan. You guys are all excited about your plan, which is great. I appreciate that. But I want to warn you, life happens, right? I think you're familiar with this. I think that's the theme of 2020, right? Is, stuff happens that you don't expect. At this point, we've learned to expect what we don't expect, right? You're going to do your best to stick to the schedule, but stuff happens. Not every week will be the same. Some of it's predictable, some of it isn't. Somebody gets sick, or suddenly work is not very busy, so you find that you can listen to lectures during the day. Take advantage of extra time that you have and adjust when you have less time. Forgive yourself, make the needed adjustments, kind of make sure you're still on schedule to cover everything, and just move on. Know that not every week are you going to hit on every cylinder. I put in lots of blocks of study time into these weeks. In reality, one of those blocks will probably fall away every week, right? Something isn't going to work out, but they all have more than they need. So as long as the person is really committing to doing active study during the rest of the time, you'll still be successful. Okay, so just roll with it, make the necessary adjustments and move on. Now, I want to caution you, it doesn't help to say, okay, I blew it this week, I'm going to totally reset and start over like 6 times during your bar study. not a recipe for success. But to make those small adjustments along the way, it's like you're steering a ship, you know where you want to go, but it turns out the tide blew you a little this way, or tide doesn't blow, right? I don't know, pushes, sucks, I don't know. Whatever. It gets you off track, you just steer yourself back on track. Okay? So I hope this has been helpful. I will kind of pop back into Q&A, but I want to remind you um, you know, of all of these great features. Foreign educated law students, I'm going to just take a bunch of Q&A right now. So for the rest of you, that's all I'm doing. If you find it helpful, stick around. And if not, thank you so much for coming. Foreign educated law students, I do, I think you do need to give more time, especially since you're a European law system. And you need to give more time to writing in the way that we write here, with that IRAC format. Okay, so you want to learn the writing format. But some of our courses are somewhat statutory, like civil procedure is fairly statutory and evidence is fairly statutory. So it's surprisingly that some of them are, just apply the rule. So I do recommend giving it more time and then spending time on the subjects that are completely unfamiliar to you, spending more time on those subjects. And then for common law educated students, those tend to just be civil procedure, evidence, and constitutional law, because the common law in the other areas is at least, somewhat similar to what you've seen in common law countries. Civil law countries, it is, a little bit more of a, of a climb. And the other option is, of course, to get an LLM in U.S. legal studies or U.S. law at, a U.S. law school. It's not 100% necessary, though. We've had students who succeeded. I had a student in France. He wrote to me all the time and passed the bar in February of this year. That's when it was. But, a lot of work over a long period of time. That student, civil law, French law student, passed the bar. So, Victor, you are welcome. Nita, I answered your question, so which was important to let people know where to find stuff. If you want to do more practice essays, how should you approach this? I think, Catherine, most recent years back is a great way to do it. Check and see. I've got some tests in the calendar that you're using as practice tests. I think might be February 2018, something like that. So skip that one, but then do the most recent on back. That's a great way to do it. Or if you're working with a tutor, your tutor might recommend essays on specific topics. Like if you say, hey, I really need more search and seizure, they can tell you right off the bat which essays are search and seizure. You know what I mean? But yeah, otherwise, most recent, backward, because they tend to test similar issues kind of in waves, and something that they haven't tested in 10 years, hasn't come up, or 12 might not come up. Although we never know. How should repeaters schedule their time? Great question, fair question. Most of your time, MBE and essays, the lectures are on time consuming and I'm on brain dead by the time I finish them. Daniel, you are exactly right. Mostly MBE and essays. And I think you probably got that from the bulk of this discussion, that if you are a repeater, you do not need to listen to the lectures over again. If anything, listen to a segment over again and say, you know what? All that First Amendment stuff went whoosh. So I'm going to do a bunch of common law questions. I'm going to listen to the First Amendment section again. I'm going to do the questions after the First Amendment section, looking at the rules as I go. And then I'll do a bunch more common law questions, but you're not listening to 7 hours of lecture. You're listening then to, I don't know, an hour and a half or whatever it is on First Amendment. You see what I mean? You are going to limit your lecture time. And if you've been through it, you know that some of the lectures might have been more helpful to you than others. So take that into account when you decide how much lecture to listen to, but lectures are not your priority. I agree. Okay, I've answered that one. And I've answered that one. Having my baby in June and taking the bar in early July. Okay, I had somebody who did this, and then she had to postpone. So you've got to be ready to roll with the punches. We knew with this particular student who is now an Illinois lawyer that if anything went unusual, anything whatsoever went unusual about her labor delivery or anything else, that all came first, and she would postpone the bar exam. And it turned out that she did need a cesarean section, and boom, she postponed the bar exam because she knew she couldn't do it. Studying with a newborn is really, really hard because they don't allow you to sleep. In general, that is the nature of a newborn. So while it's possible, yeah, you need to be focusing every moment that you can on study prior to your baby's birth, okay? Because you don't have much time in between. You want to make sure that you've covered all the material prior to your baby's birth. And then understand that you'll just be reviewing for the rest of the time. Okay, you really want to work with somebody very specifically on your schedule with this. And needless to say, you need a heck of a lot of support. You know, you need, I hope you have a supportive co-parent or you know, I mean, that student, we met, this was when I was tutoring live, right? When I was, before I came to BarMax, and we would meet at a Starbucks, and it was near her mother's house. So she would leave work and drop off the baby and come meet with me. And she had a flexible work schedule. She was done by 3. It was like her schedule was a military drill, even to study for the July bar after, you know, she postponed. But, you know, you get it done. It's just, it's very, very difficult. And you might want to talk to people who are actual parents, because I tell you this not having had a baby. I just know their reputation as being small people who keep people awake all night long. Oh my goodness, I got through the Q&A. I thank you so much. The 80 of you that stuck this out and are still attending. I really want to thank you know, Jennifer and Katie, who have been answering questions for all of you in chat. I really couldn't have done it without them either. We are quite a team here at BarMax, and we're the team that's here for you, okay? So reach out. We want to help you through this process. Stay safe, happy holidays, and happy studying.